Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a powerful team that helped me go on a 16-game win streak in the Open Ultra League. Now, the team consists of a Defense Deoxys lead with a Guzzlord in the back. Now, those two Pokemon have really good coverage, so they can cover each other's weaknesses very nicely. And for the save switch, I was running Shadow Snorlax. Shadow Snorlax is an incredibly good generalist. You could also run XL Dubwool in that role, I just don't have one. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and check out some highlights from the 16-game win streak. Hopping to the first match, picking up a positive lead, Defense Deoxys into Shadow Charizard. Shadow Charizard, always a very scary Pokemon to see, as it just does absolutely obscene amounts of damage. But the nice thing about Defense Deoxys is I can tank a Blast Burn, not even be in the red health, and grab an early shield advantage with a Rock Slide. So Rock Slide will get shield advantage, now I can save switch into Shadow Snorlax and check for any counter users in the back. Opponent is staying in, seems like they don't have a great response to a Shadow Snorlax save switch, so I will shield up the Blast Burn, and now my opponent switches into the mirror. So they have a Shadow Snorlax as well, but they are behind on energy by quite a bit. I go for Superpower number 1 and Superpower number 2. Now my opponent is in a bit of an uncomfortable spot here. Are they willing to shield a move? They are not. They're just going to let the Snorlax go, basically just using it as a damage sponge, and in the back, they have Wall Rain. I am now extremely debuffed on my Snorlax, so I'm going to reset my debuff. I'm going to send back in the Deoxys into the Wall Rain. Wall Rain is going to fire off an Icicle Spear. That's going to connect. I'm not able to make it to the Rock Slide as they're going for Icicle Spear number 2, but honestly, that's perfectly fine by me. I was able to save energy on the Snorlax, and now I can send it back in. I've saved energy, and on top of that, I reset the debuff. Opponent goes for the catch onto the Shadow Charizard. Unfortunately, they are not going to be able to get it. Body Slam will get the KO. Back in comes the Wall Rain, and I'm baiting with a Body Slam. I don't want to debuff myself just yet. That is going to get the shield from the opponent, and now I can just send in Guzzlord. Guzzlord is incredibly good in the Open Ultra League, but this just goes to show that the team around it is no slouch either. As you can see, the other two Pokemon basically took out the rest of the opponent's team, so Guzzlord can just basically be used as a damage sponge here. They go for 2 Icicle Spears, we tank 2 super effective charge moves, and secure the win. Picking up a tricky lead in the next match, Defense Deoxys into Galarian Stunfisk. Despite the fact that counter does hit for super effective damage here, my charge moves basically do nothing, so this is honestly not a fabulous lead. I'm going to stay in here, wait for them to throw, bank all this energy for later, and then I'm going to send in Shadow Snorlax. Snorlax farming up on energy, Stunfisk is firing off a charge move, and I'm going to let this through. Earthquake is able to land, but I'm able to withstand that damage, and now my opponent sends out Tapu Fini, and oh my goodness, it is incredibly good to see the Tapu Fini here, as Tapu Fini absolutely crushes the Guzzlord in the back. Snorlax is going to be firing off a Body Slam here. Body Slam is going to connect onto the Tapu Fini. Snorlax will make another Body Slam, so my opponent is forced to throw their energy. That's perfectly fine by me, as I saved a massive amount of energy on the Deoxys. So now my Deoxys energy is put to a lot better use, as now I can use it to help get rid of this Tapu Fini. I'm going for the back-to-back Rock Slides here. Rock Slide number 2 is going to be no-shielded. I'll have to see what my opponent has in the back. It's a Trevenant, and things are looking good for a Guzzlord sweep. I'm firing off a Psycho Boost just to get some chip damage, and now I can send in Guzzlord. Back in comes the Galarian Stunfisk, farming up with the Guzzlord. I will commit the shield because honestly I had lost count of their energy. Turns out it's only a Rock Slide. At this point, all I need is damage, so I can just go for the Dragon Claw bait. Even if they call the bait, which they do, this just puts it into farm down range. I can go for Dragon Claw number 2 to force the final shield. I can shield once myself, fully farm down, and my Guzzlord is just way too healthy for Trevenant to do anything to it. That's again one of the things that I absolutely love about Guzzlord, is it just obliterates Trevenant. Trevenant can just do absolutely nothing here. Opponent sends back in the Trevenant, they go for the Shadow Ball, Guzzlord tanks it like it's nothing, and the opponent concedes the match. We see a tricky lead in the next match, Defense Deoxys into Umbreon. Even though my counters do hit for super effective damage, Umbreon is of course able to outpace, and their foul plays are going to add up even against the bulky Deoxys. So foul play is going to connect, I'm going to return fire with the Rock Slide, and since it looks like they're throwing on alignment, I am going to throw 3 more counters, look for the catch, onto the Shadow Snorlax. I don't get the catch, but the good news is my opponent stays in here and throws their energy anyway. So honestly, that works out great for me. They go for foul play number 1, and they go for foul play number 2, and I am more than happy to just let Snorlax absorb this damage. My opponent is now going to send in Talonflame, and Talonflame is going to be hit with quite a few body slams here. Going for body slam number 1, Talonflame, farming up, and going to be hit with body slam number 2. Now this will not be lethal, but it will get the Talonflame low. Talonflame able to hang on and make it to the Flame Charge. I'm going to let this through and go for an aggressive counter down with the Deoxys. I'm hoping 5 counters KO, but they barely do not. Talonflame with 1 HP, able to hang on, make it to the Flame Charge, and that is quite unfortunate. We'll have to see what my opponent has in the back. We don't get to see as they send back in the Umbreon. I'm going to be firing off the Rock Slide into the Umbreon, continuing to farm up, and we do get the catch this time, catching the foul play onto the Guzzlord. It all depends what they have in the back. They have Pidgeot in the back, and this is a bit scary in the 2 shield. As Pidgeot, odds are they're probably just going to be Feather Dancing me. I commit the shield, and of course, it is a Feather Dance. I wanted to protect against a potential just full send through 2 shields Brave Bird, but unfortunately it looks like they're just going straight for the Feather Dance. So I am now debuffed, so unfortunately my moves are now going to do a lot less. I go for the Dragon Claw, that is going to connect, continuing to farm with the Guzzlord. This is a tough call. I'm going to call that it's a Feather Dance. I know shield, it's the Feather Dance, and suddenly there's a win con. I'm going to go for the Crunch since Crunch will do more damage than a Dragon Claw. Gets the shield, and we get the snipe with the Deoxys. The banked Rock Slide from earlier coming in clutch as we KO the Pidgeot. In comes the Umbreon, and the opponent concedes the match. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Defense Deoxys into Galarian Stunfisk. As I mentioned previously, this is honestly not a good lead for Deoxys, because even though the counters do hit for super effective damage, my charge moves are absolutely useless here. So I'm just going to tank energy, save my energy for later, and send in the Shadow Snorlax. My opponent is staying in here and going for an Earthquake, so it seems like they don't have a great check to Snorlax in the back. Earthquake is going to connect, and now in comes Shadow Swampert. I'm farming up, going for the Body Slam, but unfortunately I do not quite have the back-to-back, and my opponent does have the Hydro Cannon, and they go for it right away. That's great energy awareness by my opponent. I will commit the shield because I do want to try and get shields down here. So I'm going to farm up, fire off a Body Slam, and this should be grabbing a shield from my opponent. Body Slam is going to grab a shield, and here I only have 1 shield remaining. I decide not to use it. I'm just going to let the Snorlax go and instead look for energy on Guzzlord. Guzzlord gets a full farm down as they do not make the Earthquake. In the back, opponent has Talonflame, and Guzzlord is about to eat. Guzzlord fires off the Dragon Claw, farming up, and we see a Snipe switching back into the Deoxys and going for the Rock Slide. This will grab the final shield from the opponent. Opponent staying in to throw energy, and that works out great for me, as I'm just going to let this through. They go for the Brave Bird. I can send back in Guzzlord. They bring in the Stunfisk to reset their debuff, but I have energy on the Guzzlord. I can go for the Crunch, and we get the defense drop as well. Guzzlord just in absolute control here. Even if they do land the Earthquake, look at this. We're not even in the red. Guzzlord, absolute monster, able to withstand that damage. Go for the Crunch onto the Talonflame. Crunch gets them to 1 HP, and the Guzzlord farms down. Picking up a terrible lead in the next match, Defense Deoxys into Jellicent. I'm actually going to stay in this matchup to start because I'm looking to bank energy and try and go for a catch. So I farm up with the Deoxys, switch and catch what should hopefully be a Shadow Ball onto my Shadow Snorlax. And it is, you love to see it. Opponent now going to respond with Shadow Drapion. Drapion, of course, is going to be resisting the lick damage, but I can still apply some pressure with Body Slam. So I'm going to farm up till just before the Crunch, go for a move, but my opponent is running Aqua Tail. Oh no, I'm just going to let the Snorlax go, but Snorlax refuses to get KO'd, surviving on 1 HP, and I'm able to make a superpower. That deals some very significant damage to the Drapion, as now they're very comfortably in Rock Slide range. So I can send back in the Deoxys, fire off the Rock Slide, and KO the Drapion. When they bring in Jellicent, I'm just going to be sending in Guzzlord. Opponent is waiting their clock. In comes the Jellicent. I bring in Guzzlord, and they have Gliscor in the back. This is a pretty good spot to be in if you're the Guzzlord, because Gliscor has to land an Earthquake to deal any meaningful damage. Guzzlord continuing to farm up. Opponent is going to fire off a charge move here. I decide to be brave, call the bait, and it's just the Night Slash. And now, this was already a winning position, but it is now even more so. I go for the Dragon Claw. Opponent will make the Earthquake, but I can very comfortably shield here, as they will full send the Quake, and there's just nothing Jellicent can do to Guzzlord here. Guzzlord is an incredibly hard wall to Jellicent, since now, none are running Ice Beam, they're all running Surf, and they're running Shadow Ball. So I'm in a very good spot here. I'm going to build up a lot of energy, bait with the Dragon Claw, looking for the shield, and my opponent is going to commit the shield. Again, farming up with the Guzzlord and going for another Dragon Claw bait. This is in time for my opponent. They double shield, and honestly, I still don't think I get KO'd here. I let this go. Opponent goes for the Shadow Ball. Guzzlord, refusing to die, makes it to the Crunch. Crunch will be lethal, taking out the Jellicent, and securing the win. Picking up a decent lead in the next match, Defense Deoxys into Pidgeot. Deoxys, of course, does have Rock Slide that can hit Pidgeot for super effective damage, but the unfortunate thing is that Pidgeot is going to win CMP, and they get to debuff my attack by 2 stages with Feather Dance. So I'm going to no-shield the Feather Dance, fire off the Rock Slide, even when debuffed, it still deals some important chip damage, and now I can save switch into the Shadow Snorlax. Pidgeot staying in here, farming up a ton of energy, so you know what? I'm just going to fire off the Body Slam. Let's get some chip damage. Opponent commits a shield. That works out perfectly for me. And I take a Brave Bird from this health range, so I'm just going to let this go. Opponent goes for another Feather Dance, and now they send in Registeel. Our switch clocks are very misaligned. The question is, am I going to be able to take advantage of it? Unfortunately, with my lowered attack, Superpower does absolutely nothing to Registeel. You hate to see it. I'm going for Superpower number 2. This is going to be doing even less. Looking to pivot into the Deoxys, but unfortunately, not before Registeel makes the Focus Blast and gets the KO. So now I send in Deoxys, and I'm looking for an incredibly aggressive counter down. Because my plan is, if I can counter all the way down, I can lead with double Rock Slide, and that's going to be incredibly threatening to the Pidgeot. Deoxys can't quite get the farm down, and I will be forced to use a shield. That is unfortunate, but I'm more than happy to trade a shield in exchange for this much energy. In the back, my opponent has Trevenant, and things are looking very good for me here. I Psycho Boost, get some chip, in comes the Guzzlord, opponent sends back in Pidgeot, and again, Pidgeot probably just going for a Feather Dance, so I am not going to be shielding, and I can go for the Dragon Claw with the Guzzlord, and Dragon Claw should just about be lethal here. Pidgeot is going to let that through. Pidgeot actually able to survive the debuff Dragon Claw, but again, Guzzlord is just too healthy. People love Trevenant in the Ultra League, and Guzzlord absolutely obliterates it. They go for the Seed Bomb. I'm going for the Crunch. Crunch is double debuffed, but it's still gonna hurt. Crunch plus a Dragon Tail secures the victory. Hopping into the final game of the win streak, leading Defense Deoxys into Shadow Swampert. With this lead, I like just going straight for the Psycho Boost and then save switch into the Shadow Snorlax. This way I get a lot of chip damage or I grab an early shield. This time, I get a lot of chip damage. They're going to be firing off an Earthquake here. Since they are a Shadow, I will respect it as Earthquake would hit for a lot of damage. My opponent now going to send in their own Shadow Snorlax, and that works out for me. I'm just going to look to farm up. My opponent has enough energy for a Superpower, but I tank it, so I'm going to let this through. They end up going for the Body Slam bait, and that works out nicely for me, as I'm going to be firing off Superpower, grabbing a shield from my opponent, and going for Superpower number 2. This, of course, is going to be debuffed. My opponent is now going to let that through. I'm looking to potentially switch into Deoxys, but my switch clock just does not come up in time. I'm double debuffed, so a Body Slam is going to be lethal, but this sets up Deoxys to potentially get a nice farm, as Deoxys should be able to farm down and leave with a lot of energy to threaten the Swampert. Opponent does not want to let that happen. They send in the Swampert, but with the energy lead, I'm able to outpace, make the Psycho Boost. Opponent lets it go, and bye-bye Swampert. We'll have to see what my opponent has in the back. I'm double debuffed, so I am looking to switch. It's a Shadow Charizard. Now, Shadow Charizard does have access to Dragon Claw, so you might think this is a bad matchup for Guzzlord, but it is not. Look at the Dragon Tail damage, absolutely shredding through the Charizard. I'm firing off a Dragon Claw here. Dragon Claw into the Charizard is going to grab the final shield. Opponent is firing off a Dragon Claw. I will commit my shield as well, and I just have to watch for a catch at this point, and I don't. I needed to watch for the switch, so I go for the undercharge into the Snorlax, get the Dragon Tail down anyway, and now my opponent has to double up. They cannot, and that is a good game. All in all, I do believe that this is an incredibly powerful team that you can use to help push towards Legend during these final couple weeks of Open Ultra League. The Defense Deoxys Guzzlord core is just insanely strong right now, and on top of that, the entire team is very bulky, so it's a very bulky, very flexible team, and Guzzlord in the endgame is just such an incredibly good core breaker. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube, the Sport Guys